Yeah, yeah, we have.
Good morning, everybody. Let's get started. I'm Christina Sorrento. I'm the Chief of the Intake and Regulatory Coordination Division, and this is the DRC meeting for Primrose at 16650 Georgia Avenue. Your lead reviewer is Jonathan Casey. Jonathan will highlight any of the major items we should discuss and then turn it over to the applicant. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Good morning, Jonathan Casey, Up County Planning. So what we have before us is a proposed daycare with conditional use has already been to DRC. The only big ticket item, which admittedly was not mentioned on the DRC comments, is a question about the existing non-conforming building in the front. It's an antique shop. Question about the front setback and whether creating a lot around the two uses creates an issue with the setback for the existing front building. And I've notified the applicant's counsel, and we're going to work through the details on that following this meeting. I don't think we have a ton of major comments. You all have questions for us or any of the other agencies?
Sure. Thank you very much, everybody. Hopefully this one is still fresh. We were in here, I think it was December, I think, to go over comments on the conditional use application. And per that discussion, we've kind of held off with a comment response, kind of waiting to get these together. This application would go under the new process where the preliminary plan and the conditional use get reviewed concurrently. So this is our opportunity to kind of receive the comments today. We do have a couple of questions to go through, but we will be doing a response submission for both of them together so that this can get moving forward. I know Mark isn't, I don't know if he's online, isn't here, but Mark has flagged the issue of requesting an extension from OZA to allow this process to move concurrently. So that's on our radar too. And we'll be taking care of that as well. But with that, why don't we get into our questions? Courtney.
Sure. My name is Courtney Gallagher with Morris and Ritchie Associates. Just a couple of questions from me. One, for the fire comments we received, they look to be identical to the conditional use comments. One clarification I'd like to confirm at the DRC for conditional use. It was our understanding that the 15-foot setback clear and walkable grade along all exposed exterior walls that could be reduced to 10 feet and that would be acceptable by the fire marshal. Is that still the case?
Hi, this is Maria LeBaugh. I'm the fire department access reviewer, and that'll be something we have to look at on a case-by-case basis. The executive regulation does require 15 feet. If we want to go to 10, we'll need to have some performance-based discussions.
Okay, will do. I know there are some transportation clarification items that I'll let Nick handle, but jumping over transportation, I have a couple of WSSC questions, or I guess a comment. There was a statement about the water service and having to abandon the existing service and upsize it to provide a new connection for both the existing building and the proposed building. We had a preliminary discussion with Brian Hall, I think over the summer, and he suggested that we might be able to retain the existing water meter and service for the existing building to remain, and then provide a second meter and service to the new daycare. That's just something we'd like to discuss further with you all, because I think good
morning. This is WSSC. That need to be discussed too during review.
Okay.
It depends of the analysis that is done of the design. I don't know what to you talk with Brian, but it's not a decision that can be done in this point of the project.
Understood. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And then last comment or question for me, the proposed, let's see, county transportation made a comment regarding adding a proposed road cross section to the plan. We're not proposing any improvements at this point within the Georgia Avenue right of way. I just want to confirm what that request is.
Hi, this is Katie McCready. I'm filling in for Justine. Doesn't matter if you're not changing anything. We still need to see a cross section that shows conformance with the complete streets design guide so that we can make our findings for master plan conformance. So I would include both the the Georgia Avenue main and the service road, but the service road is really what's gonna be important here, because that's really where your frontage is.
So we did have a cross-section of the existing conditions on the plan. Is that?
It's possible that he didn't see it. So when you're, with your response to comments, would you know which sheet it is? And then we can take a look at that, make sure it conforms. And if not, then we need to have discussions about alternative compliance or however it works.
Understood, thank you.
Sure.
So Nick, I'm gonna turn it over to you to go over more detailed comments or questions on transportation.
Sure. Good morning, Nick Driven with Lenhart Traffic. I think really just seeking some clarification on the proposed frontage improvements or the requested frontage improvements. So there were comments 19 and 20 were pertaining to, one was related to complete streets and mentioned a 10-foot sidewalk, 10-foot bike lane, 6-foot buffer. Sounds like you already know what I'm getting at. So
Yeah. No, I'm sorry. I looked at him just before this morning. So 19, disregard. We're gonna can be inconsistent with, well, Nick, I'm hoping this is consistent with the conditional use comments. What we'd like to see is the existing side path that's on that west side continue across the frontage, and that'll satisfy both the bike and pedestrian requirement. And that should, and I think that's what he's getting at in number 20. So I think this was just one that he meant to take out. I think it's usually like a standard one he includes.
okay, I think that's generally consistent with how I was reading it. The one thing that's in number 20 is, and we talked about this at DRC for the conditional use. So 3.1 in number 20, 3.1, extend the existing side path north of the site across the HOA property.
Yeah.
I think when we discussed that previously, you were in agreement that that would be an offsite improvement and that's not a part of the frontage.
Well, so this is something that we can do. We can extend the frontage, but since you have an LATR, we're interested in having you explore that as an offsite. So because you're subject to the proportionality guide, if we have excess in the proportionality guide, we can count it towards that. But we've had projects that don't have an LATR study that will extend their frontage.
Okay, that clarifies. Thank you.
Of the HOA property. I did see some deed research in there about these lots that are actually part of the HOA property. And your LOD extends onto the HOA property. Do you have permission from the HOA to do the work that you need to do on that piece of property?
We would have to obtain permission. At this point, that LOD represents removal of existing infrastructure that's on that property today that crosses the lot line. So that's something we'll have to work out with them.
You have anything else that we wanted to go on? I think that's really all that we had on this batch of comments, and we understand what the remainder were from the last component. So we'll be getting started with our response mission. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
1 second. Okay. Try that. That works. I'm Christina Sorrento. I'm the chief of the Intake and Regulatory Coordination Division, and this is the DRC meeting for Don Bosco Cristo Rey High School Recreation Center. Your lead reviewer is Marco Fuster, and the purpose of this meeting is for you to gather any comments that, or ask any questions about the comments that you received. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded. I'll turn it over to Marco to highlight any of the major items and then turn it over to the applicant. Go ahead, Marco.
Hi, Marco Fuster here with Down County Planning. So just a few highlights. It appears the work would not be subject to Planning Department review other than the Forest Conservation Plan. The master plan, PROWAG, and Complete Streets design guidelines all would like to see tree-lined sidewalks. However, an appropriate right-of-way to achieve them and the setbacks accordingly. That would largely be in coordination with Tacoma Park. Given the proximity to Prince George's County, the location in the city, and the frontage on New Hampshire, the master plan also recommends interagency coordination on any of the work. Then the some of the existing encroachments into the unbuilt right-of-way and even into the nearby parkland are problematic and need to be rectified. Then prior to proceeding, the statement, the narrative or statement justification was a little conflicted. It seemed to indicate that this was a public project. That's likely not the case. However, before proceeding, we just like to have email coordination to demonstrate that you are in fact exempt from other applications that the planning staff here would be reviewing. And those are the highlights, and we're here to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions?
Yeah, thanks, Marco. This is Jake Klotzbaugh with AdTech Engineers. We're the civil engineer representing the church for this project. First of all, I wanted to thank you for your thoroughness in this review. These concepts sort of reviews always help us and tend to, keep the project on track. It's nice to see some of these comments early on. So again, thank you and the rest of you as well for your reviews. Leafing down through the comments, we had a couple that not really jumped out, but things that we wanted to get some clarification on. One being the possible exemption from the site plan, and a couple others just kind of relating to parking on site and things like that and possible exemptions for that. So I guess we'll start with that parking item. And this was a comment that had come from multiple of the reviewers. We're just looking for clarity on that section. It's defined in section 59 -6.2 of the zoning ordinance, the kind of parking tabulation. And I guess we were just looking for some clarity on how that parking tabulation is calculated, and if there is any room. I guess what I'm getting at is we have students at this school who do not drive themselves. And Rich, you might be able to help me out here. I don't think any of the students drive. If they do, it's a very small number. And I think the ordinance calls for calculating this based on a percentage of students over a certain age, like 16 years old or something like that. I just didn't know if you guys could offer any guidance on if there's a way that we can convey in the description that students aren't driving to the school and it would only be staff and maybe parents utilizing the parking on site.
And
Just to clarify, kind of in real life, so it is a high school. So there are, juniors and seniors generally are of age to have their driver's licenses. Some do drive. It's not a very large number. If as a practical matter, if you were there on any given school day, what I call the main parking lot, which is the one above or behind the school, might be anywhere from half to 2/3 full. There's never anybody parking in the lower parking lot over to the right, because there's just, and that includes all of our staff as well. So additional parking for the school itself is definitely not a concern at all.
So one thing along with that, you would also have to consider the parking from the new rec center, which there was some language in the narrative suggesting it was also open to non people not directly associated with the school. But anyway, it doesn't appear that this is subject to regulatory review other than the forest conservation, and the parking requirements are beyond the scope of the forest conservation. If it were subject to a plan we were looking at, say preliminary plan or site plan, conditional use or mandatory referral, there'd be a staff report that would explain how you're meeting the requirements or how you might qualify for a waiver. But given that it doesn't appear you're subject to any of those reviews, it's my understanding per the zoning ordinance, you would need to meet that, but I'm not exactly certain how it would be applied. You're in the city of Tacoma Park. It's not clear to me right now how that would happen. Perhaps others on the call here during the meeting might have more insights on that. If not, I'd have to get back to you on that.
This is Amy Zoe with DPS zoning. When you apply for building permit, DPS zoning need to see a parking analysis to show you the proposed improvement meet the code requirements, section 6.2.4. And if you don't have enough space on the property, then we need to see an offsite parking agreement, from a property adjacent to this one or close enough to this subject property to show proposed improvement meet the requirement. And also but let's say, since this property will have multiple users like religious assembly and private schools. So if you can demonstrate through a shared use parking analysis to show since the users use this property at different time, then you can meet the parking on site, then that's also fine. There is a parking waiver process, but still, my understanding is DPS, we don't issue a waiver unless you show in writing parking arrangement and agreement enough parking is provided somewhere else. So.
Hey, Amy, this is Sean Benjaminson with AdTech Engineers as well. Just circling back, I think the crux of the matter is how the ordinance is written. It's written that it's driving the number. It's inferring that there's a lot of student drivers that would come up about, and that just isn't the case on this property. And and it basically says X number of students or X number, per that. And the school wants to be, honest with the submission, but adding a bunch of impervious area when a lot of the other comments talk about driving the impervious area down. It seems counterintuitive, and I want to make sure that we have a complete submission when we come in.
Well, DPS, what the code says is the requirement, and we cannot say this is the requirement, this is the code, but this is the situation. You cannot, unless, like I just mentioned, the code requires based on student number and employee number. So you have to show you meet those requirements.
All right, well, we'll have to talk internally on that and see what we're going to do. Thank you.
All right. Thank you all for that. Let's see. That clears up a couple of the other comments relating to parking. We had an environmental comment from Ariel. I don't know if she's on the call. This was basically relating to stream valley buffers on site and reforesting them. Please ensure.
Good morning. This is Ariel Zelaya, the environmental planner for this project. Yeah, unfortunately, the parking lot that you have 56 spot and then the ball field, that is within the stream buffer. And we will ask you to remove the paver and reforest the green section. So you have to do process of soil rebuilding and then put some trees over there. You could, I hope so we have the park people here because usually what we look for here is maybe land dedication. If not, this department would request you to create an easement after you do the improvements for the stream buffer body.
So all that parking is existing today, the field is existing today.
Yeah, that's we're aware about that. However, the section 22A12 calls for all the on forest stream valley buffers that will have to be restored. So your parking lot is within the stream buffer. But yeah, that's seems like you're losing that that area and the ball field as well.
So, this is Rich Dumais. I'm from the school, but also helping with the parish because this is all archdiocesan property. If you remove that parking area that's in the Spring Valley buffer, basically the church would not, even the church itself would not be able to function because that's parking that they need. I was under the impression from earlier discussions that that was installed many years ago before the Stream Valley buffer was moved and therefore was grandfathered and was perfectly fine to leave as is. Is that not the case?
So we have legal team here, but basically when you come, I think so we may have legal team, but when you come for a new development, you have to comply with the new standards and that the forest conservation law has implemented. Therefore, it totally applied that you have to comply with this reforestation program under the forest conservation law.
Oh, that's a big problem.
Yeah, I see that.
Kind of related to, I guess sort of related to this comment was the acquisition of the paper road to the north.
Yeah, that's optional. You could explore maybe with the city. And if I'm not the most not knowledgeable people about this, but perhaps that paper road will be divided and split in two sections. So one section is going to go to park, and then the other section will go to you. And that section we will, because it is within the stream buffer valley, we will be asking you to restore that section as well. More importantly, because that section is affected by the encroachment, and you will have to coordinate with parks and the city of Tacoma to restore that section as well. We haven't seen the natural resource inventory, but we have communication with people that went to do the survey from our department, and it seems like in the bottom there's some invasive species, and we will ask you, that is within your property, we'll ask you to control invasive species over there as well. So it is very complex. We're talking about soil restoration. We're talking about removing the pavers and reforest that area. And perhaps the two options that you have here, it's either land dedication to the parkland, or we will ask you for forest conservation easement category 2, which you won't be able to build or do anything. Just that can change in the future, but for now, that's what we will pursue it under the forest conservation law.
Okay, and there was also a comment regarding purchasing parcels adjacent to the existing parks. We weren't really, I mean, we looked at unless we're talking about outside the county, there weren't really any
No, so sorry, probably I was not very clear. That section is basically to make the parkland aware that this property is under development, and because it's a environmental sensitive section and right next to a parkland. So maybe parks can consider to buy this section, just within the stream buffer valley area. But I'm not sure if they're hearing the call and maybe they have some saying on it. But that's just for parkland to park people to be aware about this development. It's not on you, sorry, but probably that create a little bit confusing.
Fair enough. Okay, yeah, thanks for elaborating. I think that hit all the environmental questions. Marco, you had a comment about a question about a proposed addition to the church on the plan here. We weren't terribly sure what that was pointing to or what the question was there. The current building appears to have a different footprint than what is being shown. I think that was on the far left building there.
Yeah, right in this area where the cursor is. That's there. Sorry, I could switch over to an error.
I can respond to that. I'm Michael Smiles. I'm with Groveland Park Architects. That's a graphical error on our point for the site issue. That's all it is. We make no intent to make edits to the church.
Okay. Okay. I was suspected as much, but just that's why the question was there.
Just an issue, a graphical issue from Adobe Illustrator. Sorry about that.
Okay.
All right, and then we were curious about, there was a comment regarding acquisition of right-of-way for New Hampshire. It looks like the master planned width there is 75 feet from center line, so 150 foot right-of-way. Is there any recommended action related to that for this project, or we just wanted to get some clarity on that?
Well, again, if you were subject to, say, preliminary plan, we would be requiring the dedication. But since you're not, then potentially through the review with the city, they essentially could require it. I'm not sure on that. Then there are times you could, say, provide advanced dedication if you were interested, but the planning staff here wouldn't have a way of posing that. But it's something certainly recommended by the master plan and a number of other guiding documents.
Got it. Okay, I think that covers all the questions that we had. Sean, did you want to follow up with any of those?
No, I think we need to talk offline and probably have to have another conversation on the parking and the parking and existing fields within the stream buffer, because this is going to be a major tipping point on if this project can move forward. It just the fields seem counterintuitive. Removing the fields seem counterintuitive to some of the comments that are in the staff report talking about, recreational areas and those types of thing and open play. We're moving it, and I understand there's competing interests there, but I'm not an environmental expert. I'll have to get my environmental guy to weigh in on that and probably have a follow-up conversation.
Rich, Mike, any closing thoughts?
No. Big concern on the parking. Yeah, that's going to be a real problem.
Same, no further thoughts. We'll have to just continue the conversation online.
Yep.
Feel free to reach back out if once you have some questions or thoughts on it.
Okay, thanks, Marco. And we appreciate everybody else's time again. This is very helpful, and hopefully we look forward to progressing this project forward.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Okay, thanks, everybody.
See ya. Thanks.